So, hello, welcome to Foreignsics, the What is Life podcast, where we make the uncomfortable comfortable. I'm your host, Zafreen, and thanks for being here. And I'm joined today by my esteemed friend and guest for today, Daniel Rivera.
What's up? Esteemed. That's a good word. Yeah, no, super excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. I have to, gas you up a little bit. This is not going to be a bashing session.
I thought it was a roast. I was ready for a roast.
No, it's fine. So today we're going to be talking about manifesting your dreams and desires and what that means for us and the experiences we've had to pretty much get to where we are today. And I'm hoping today can really just be a conversation and for seeing just, where things take us and go from there.
Yeah, sounds great.
So before we dive into today's topic, I just wanted to give you, Daniel, a space to just introduce yourself. Tell us a little about what you have going on, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm master manifester. Just kidding. That's not a thing.
We should all be master manifestors.
Yeah, master manifestors. So my name's Daniel Rivera. I'm a photographer, videographer here in Nashville, Tennessee. I specialize in luxury retreats, hotels, resorts, and just really, really dope clients. Started out trying to get my degree in economics, ended up dropping out of college. Worked sales for a tech company, did door-to-door sales, and then jumped into photography cold turkey. And my first full year working, I broke 6 figures, which is pretty unheard of in photography. My second year, I broke 200, and then this year, I almost will break 300. I can try. I'm manifesting it. But yeah. So that's a little bit about myself. I really pride myself in education in regards of just continuous knowledge on how to make your situation or life better. Yeah. I hope to be a serial entrepreneur. I'm an investor, and then ideally just really love to give back and hope that people find success in whatever fields that they're in as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And prime reason why I feel like you are a perfect guest for this topic. And one of those things of, I guess for myself, for why my story of and how I relate to this topic is I chose to go against all societal norms in that I am in an interracial marriage. I dated and married somebody outside of my culture, outside of my region, outside of my religion. And I have essentially carved a path for myself that is very against the grain for a traditional first generation Bengali, Southeast Asian, brown person in general. So yeah.
And look at you now.
Yeah, look at us now.
Blissfully married.
Indeed. Yeah, good times. All right, so let's kind of talk about our turning points for when we decided to pursue this path of putting ourselves essentially first or making ourselves a priority.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Turning point. Man, I feel like there are a lot of doing door-to-door sales. It takes a special breed.
Yeah.
You have to be really disciplined. You have to understand the art of sales. Yeah. And I actually credit a ton of my success to door-to-door sales, right? Because it taught me the art of selling anything. Yeah. And at this time it was smart home technology, right? It was alarms, whatever, made cameras, whatever it be for your home. But my turning point, I think, which I don't really think about it. I always mention it was this time I got sick and then went back to work and I hated it so much that I just quit. But I don't think that was the turning point. I think that was just a catalyst.
Yeah.
I think the turning point was I was in college and I was an economics major and I was working this job at this convention center. And I was like, this is dumb, but I guess this is my route. I'm just doing it to make money, right? And I watched a movie called Chef by Jon Favreau. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
The movie? Okay.
Yes.
It's a great movie. It's not supposed to be like a foodie movie. It's supposed to be like a feel-good chef story. But I remember I watched it, and the whole time watching it, I was like, what is this cinematic masterpiece of food? I was like, this is amazing. It made me feel good. I was happy. I was excited. So I went out, and with the little money I had, I bought a chef knife from Williams & Sonoma, sponsor us. And I bought this chef knife. I still have it. And I bought a giant bag of onions and a giant bag of carrots.
Yeah.
And I started just chopping, and I wanted to learn how to just knife skills.
Yeah.
And went to this restaurant with my sister, Black Sheep Cafe out in Provo, Utah. And it was amazing, amazing food. And I remember my sister was like, hey, you should apply for this position, right?
Yeah.
I found the chef's Instagram, just reach out. And I was like, awesome. So I reached out to Chef Mark Daniel Mason, and I said, hey, not sure if you guys are hiring, but I would love to work as a line cook. This is 2007. No, this is 2015, I believe. And, or late 2014. And I applied. And he goes, I don't know. He's like, did anyone tell you that we had someone quit today? I was like, no. He's like, you literally messaged me the day someone quit. So come on through. When's the next availability you have? They do something called staging, which is you show up and it's like a working interview.
Yeah.
So it's unpaid and you just cook. And so I had no idea about kitchens. So I Googled a ton and YouTubed. Anytime like you don't know something, just get on YouTube. Like someone out there knows it. So there's no need for you to do research. Someone else has done the research. So I just YouTube like how to work in a professional kitchen. Yeah, and I just like searched for hours that night. The next day I show up, and after the whole night's over, he looks at me, pulls me aside, and he goes, where have you worked before? And I go, nowhere. And he goes, no, you must have worked somewhere. Like you understood everything, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just watched YouTube. Like a little idiot. I'm like, yeah, YouTube. I was like 21. And he was like, all right, you're hired. And not only that, but I want to mentor you. Yeah. And he became one of my best friends. And up to this day, he's been a huge impact in my life. And I'm still really good friends with the whole family, the owners. And that was a turning point because I guess I realize it now. Like I was doing something I loved. Yeah. And the pay wasn't the best pay in the world. Sure. But it was like, I felt fulfilled every single day. Like, hey, this is something I'm doing and people are happy. They come here and they're eating amazing food. Yeah. And I became general manager, and then I helped with the owner do other amazing things, and she became one of my best friends. And I felt super fulfilled, and I think that's why when I switched from that to a big boy job, right, and went into the sales world, like I felt like defeated and depleted. And although the money was there, it was just emptiness. And I think that was a turning point, but not the catalyst, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, right, we have these moments or phases in our lives that we feel, and even like you said, talking about it now, you didn't realize how impactful it was until you had to like think about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty incredible because a lot of times we don't realize all those little nuggets until we look back. And a lot of times when we're headed towards our goals or dreams, or trying to get from point A to point B, we don't realize how many pieces of the road we're laying down until it's already done.
Right. Well, I feel like I stumbled through most of the path, right?
Yeah, and 100%.
And like you always hear about people's ups, but it's hard to hear about people's downs because people typically don't want to share them.
Sure.
But like, I was like stumbling, and like cooking was hard as well. I was up really late at night, and the reason I quit is because I was like, man, I'm gonna have a kid now. We're expecting Enzo, our first son, or our first child. We only have one son. And I remember I was like, I can't be coming home at like midnight every day or 1 o'clock. Like it's just too late. And that's when I switched to sales. And then I realized that's still not enough time. Like I understand I'm only working in the summer, and then I'm working every now and then, not in the summer, but the summer is like when you're with your kid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
they don't have school. They have activities.
Yeah, and like no one talks about that. Like they're always like, oh yeah, you just work the summers. I'm like,
do you not have families?
Yeah, do you guys not want to be with your children?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
And so then that's when I got that realization as well, and I was like, I need to get out. Because if I'm stuck here and all of a sudden I'm breaking 6 figures and then making more money in sales, my brain is not going to let me go to something else and make half as much money. Like I know it. So that's when I like abandoned ship, and I was like, all right, listen, if I'm going to go broke, I'm going to go broke doing something I love. And I jumped into photography.
Nice. And that's like one of those things too, right? Of like, if something, I feel like this is something we have in common, where if something doesn't exist, we make it exist for us.
Right, yeah.
Like we figure out what we can do, make the world work in our favor. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is that they stay in like a certain job that's, they hate waking up every morning too, but they're like, it pays the bills, and like, oh, if I just like stick it out, I'll be fine.
Yeah, that's that comfort versus risk.
Yeah, oh,
right?
For sure.
And I think we're very risk averse people in general. And so the people that are okay being uncomfortable are usually going to find the most success, also the most hardships. Yeah. But I mean, it's a risk reward, so it comes with the territory. Absolutely.
I mean, I just think about like me going through something and not having support of whether something was the right decision or not, and having to sit with that at the end of the day and being like, all right, well, you know, if it doesn't work out, what do I do? Like, what I had no fallbacks. Like, I didn't have my parents to be able to support me. I didn't have, you know, like any job lined up for me afterwards. Like, whatever I had in front of me was what I had. And it was scary because it's like, who do you have? Like, I don't know. I feel like even to this day, right? It's like, you're still trying to figure out, like, what is it your support system to be able to move forward in that direction. And I guess it's having that, I don't want to say leap of faith, that's such a cliche, but just taking the step and then being okay with yourself, realizing that you may fall and have to pick yourself back up.
Mm-hmm.
And like an example would be, there was a time where things were pretty tight and like heightened in my family, and I was straddling the line of trying to do well in school and protect them, and because I was so afraid of failing them, I ended up failing myself in the end anyways, because I wasn't able to, I was just being stretched way too thin. And I think that's when it's like you're manifesting what you really want, is like you have to figure out what are your priorities. And at the end of the day, like, people are going to be upset and people aren't going to agree with you, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, I think through my experience, so let's backtrack, one of the most beneficial things, the biggest perk of my job, which I have a lot of perks, as you know, but the biggest perk of my job is I get paid to attend conferences where there's coaches that people are paying $10,000 to $15,000 to go see, but instead they're paying me, which is great. And so I've been able to learn from some of these amazing, successful minds all around the U.S. And one of my favorite coaches talked about viewing things in this world. We view things a lot from negative, right? From like, grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
Or what if I fail, right? Or you know, work-life balance.
Sure.
There's all those things have negative connotations because they're trying to keep us safe, not necessarily hold us back. It's not bad. Grass isn't always greener is a good quote.
Yeah.
But the grass sometimes is greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Right? And they like water it where you stand. I'm like, sometimes you're standing on absolute garbage. You can water that thing all you want. It ain't gonna grow grass, right?
Yeah.
And so he just said, start looking at the positive. Like, all right, what if you do succeed? Right? What if the grass is greener?
Yeah.
Right? Make the move.
Absolutely.
Make the shift. And sometimes we're so scared to do that because we're so indoctrinated with, you know, safer is better. Once you're safe, then push forward, right?
Absolutely.
And obviously I'm not talking about gambling or anything like that. Like, you don't do that. Everything is like a precise move you make. But when I manifest things or when I dream of a goal or an idea, I think of, okay, one, am I able to work through this?
Yeah.
Is my sheer hustling going to help me accomplish this?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, I'm in. If the answer is no, then I say, okay, is my network going to help me accomplish this? If the answer is no, then I say, I cannot do this. I got to go back to square one, and I either got to hustle more or I got to build my network.
Yeah.
And from there, then I decide to launch it, right? Because no one wants to launch something into failure, but you also don't want to wait until it's all good, because it's never going to be all good.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I just think about like one of my previous jobs, I felt like I was just going up a constant like snowball up a hill, in that I recognized I was ready to move into the next phase at that institution, and I kept getting the workaround of, oh, well, you know, you have to get this certification, or you have to kind of sit in this position for X amount of months, or you have to be doing the next level work for X amount of months.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I was like,
Time skill based labor.
yeah, and I was like, that's not accurate. Like
it's the biggest lie corporate America tells us, right?
100%.
Time skill based labor makes no sense, because if I can learn something in 2 days when someone takes a year to do it, why do I need to wait the year?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it makes no sense. If you're stuck in a job where they're like, your promotion comes in 6 months, go to them and be like, all right, how am I going to be any different in 6 months than I am now? And they're going to be like, oh, you're going to be selling X amount of dollars in the business. And you're going to say, okay, if I can sell X amount of dollars in the business by this day, can I get the promotion? And then they go, oh yeah, right? And if they say no, then just like leave, because they don't want to promote you, right?
Yeah.
But if they say yeah, then take them up, sell it, get your promotion, and you're good, right?
So yes, except what happened to me is I kept hitting those milestones, and I kept getting the workaround.
Yeah.
And so then that was like, all right, so that's when I started questioning the system, and I was like, I'm seeing my peers being promoted for doing much less work than I am.
Yeah.
Something's not adding up. And so it was one of those things where I'm such an advocate for just promoting yourself, or just being an advocate for yourself in any situation that you're in. And I tell my friends when they're at work, where they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to get my next promotion until I do this, this, and this. And I was like, well, do you have that in writing? Do you have that like a tangible of what is your goal if, you know, that doesn't work out? Like, what's your backup plan? Are you just sitting here because it's comfortable? Or are you sitting here because you actually genuinely want to grow in this field? And maybe it's not a right fit because of that. And that's something that I kept experiencing day in and day out at one of my past jobs, that I was like, this is not worth my time. Like, I am slaving away. I am literally coming home so like just disgruntled because I feel like I'm doing great work and I was really passionate about the work, but I wasn't being compensated appropriately by any means. And I think what was the worst part of it was my boss saw it, but because of whatever reasons, you know, political, whatever, like of like how the organizational culture is, that it just wasn't working out. And I was like, you know what, fine, I'm just gonna leave. And that's when push comes to shove. They're like, oh, okay, we'll match your salary, or oh, well, like we'll give you that raise. And I'm like, this is what it took for you to value me as a person. And so that's when I was like, this is it. Like, I'm not going to, it was just a constant reminder of, by me working for somebody else or pushing towards somebody else, it's always putting me at a disadvantage or delaying me from getting to where I want to go. So I'm in a point now in my life when I have my goals in place and I start moving towards them. And when I hit that barrier, I'm like, okay, is this barrier like legitimate? Or is it because I truly don't have the skills or the experience to progress? Or is it other things at play that are kind of confining me into a box because other people aren't ready? And so that helps me a lot whenever I'm in any situation and realizing that maybe it's just not a right fit, and that's totally okay. It could be a right fit for somebody else. I'm just gonna move on to the next thing. And it took me a really long time to get to that place, because there are a lot of people that just sit in that and they keep trudging through it. And I'm just like, life is too short for that.
Yeah, it is. There's a quote that I currently live by, and there's a lot of quotes in my life. But one of them is, it's better to do something imperfectly than to do nothing perfectly.
Yeah.
And hopefully that resonates, because sometimes we wait for the right moment. Like, I remember so many of my friends would be like, oh, I'll get married when, he wasn't the right one because he just, he wasn't willing to clean the dishes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, that is something that you guys can work through, you know?
100%.
Like, he's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, sometimes we're looking for such a perfect human being when we ourselves aren't perfect. So why do we expect we're going to achieve ever a perfect result?
Yeah.
Or even in work, it's like, you're never going to do things at 100%, right? Accuracy, maybe 99.
Yeah.
So why do you always expect things to be 100% ready? And that has helped launch, like my YouTube and my stories and my reels and whatever it may be, because I decided, hey, you know what, it's time to just start getting it out there. And that's actually a project I just launched, and I'm hoping by the end of the year that we break 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And and just like snowball from there, right? The goal is 10K by the end of next year, and then 100K by the end of 2024.
Yeah.
And this podcast is going to help me get to at least 10 million.
I hope so. That's the goal.
So that's the goal.
No, but seriously, I mean, it's like one of those things that I feel like we sometimes can put ourselves in a box and not realize it. And what is that turning point for people to realize, like, I need to break that box?
No, people have those points all the time.
I know, but like, what is it, the tipping point to like push you over the edge to be like, accept that, okay, I'm going to.
No, accept is the key word. People have those tipping points all the time.
Yeah.
Think about how many times like somebody cries in a corner, or you know what I'm saying, or
fair,
like it's like, my
yeah.
life's unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's more of accepting your life's unfair because you suck.
Yeah, and what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
I tell people they suck all the time. Yeah, because it's like, if your life's not good, right? There's
Yeah.
very few situations in which it's like, oh, dude, your life's not good because, like, yeah, like, sorry, like, that sucked.
Yeah.
Like, some crazy freak accident. But
Yeah.
I would say most of the time you're not realizing what's going on, right? It's like, oh, my life's terrible. I don't make enough money. And I'm like, hey, man, did I just see you buy a $300 pair of shoes?
Priorities.
And it's like, you said you can't afford a house. He's like, oh, dude, $300 won't help me toward a house. I'm like, yeah, I will. I don't think you understand. He's like, a house is like $400,000. I'm like, you don't need to save $400,000, Dave Ramsey. All right, just figure. You know what I'm saying?
The snowball effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, figure it out. And so I don't know. It's when I hear people, I'd be like, oh, my situation. I'm like, your situation.
I mean,
and it's gonna sound insensitive. Like, people always bash, like, oh, Dan, like, it's different for you. Like, you had some sort of thing. Like, yeah, sure, guys. But I've been around so many people that have done it from dirt.
Yeah.
You know, and it got to a point where like excuses are just that, or excuses, and
absolutely.
And these people that are like, yeah, I have this goal, right? But it's like, dude, you can set goals all day, but you ain't putting the work.
Well, so that's the thing, right? I have this conversation with friends often, actually, in that I strip them like, you're just not ready.
Yeah.
Like
They shouldn't really be your friends anymore, though. I'm just saying that. If you have it often, you should like.
No.
I'll have it like once.
It's like, well, I have a lot of friends, and so it's one of those things where it's like, okay,
you should have like 5 friends.
That's fine. Okay, fine. He's calling me out. I only have 5 friends.
Yeah.
That's right. And so of those 5 friends, we're all in just like different stages in our lives, right? Because I think now people are, I mean, we keep saying like the pandemic highlighted this, but I really do think it forced people to realize like we don't have to stick into our normal constructs, like societal constructs of just a 9-to-5 traditional job, doing something just because it pays the bills, and at the end of the day, not being happy with what you want to do, or having that plan that you laid out like growing up has been instilled in your head of like, get married by a certain age, have a bunch of kids, have a white picket fence, like, all these things. And nowadays, I feel like people are like ready to move past that, and it's just like, how?
Yeah, I mean, there's also nothing wrong with having a white picket fence. And
no, I'm not saying there is.
Yeah. To each their own, right? But
yeah.
This, I guess, because it's something more of a, it's like, it's tough, right? Because I don't have many friends, I would say. I have good quality friends. I have many acquaintances and people that reach out and chat. I would consider them friends in the general aspect of like, hey, I know you, we know each other, I care for you, you care for me.
Yeah.
But like core group of people that I can depend on, it's like a handful, right?
Sure.
And for me, it all comes down to just figuring out like something's not working.
Yeah.
Right. And what do I have to fix or change?
Yeah.
And sometimes that fix or change is abandoning things that you believe have been on your side.
Absolutely.
And that's the hardest part. It's like one of my favorite quotes is Grant Cardone, one of his stories. And Grant Cardone said that when he was looking to make his first million, I believe it was, or he just picked a random number, and he said he called all who he thought was his friends. And he called each of them and told them essentially one goal, right? So you think of a goal. Like, what would be a goal for yours right now you're trying to accomplish?
Really get this podcast up and running.
Okay, great. Yeah, great. Podcast up and running. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So let's say you wanted to hit 100,000 subscribers in your podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a lofty goal. 100,000 on a podcast is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd go call your best friends or your so-called friends, and you say, hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah, do small talk. Be like, hey, by the way, I just launched this podcast. And they'll say the normal thing, oh, so cool, right? Everyone always says that.
Yeah.
And you're going to say, I have this goal.
Yeah.
And I want to hit 100,000 subscribers in 365 days.
Yeah.
And they're going to say 2 different things. They're going to say, oof, that's a lot. Or wow, like that's really hard. It's like 100,000 is a big number. Or they're going to say, 3 things. Or they're going to say, oh, wow, yeah, you can do it, right? Or the best one is going to be, Zafreen, it's a hard goal.
Yeah.
I think you can do it. How can I help?
Yeah.
Those are your real friends.
Those are the ones that I have.
Those are the ones you stick with. And so like, it's so often we're like, I have 10 million friends. And it's like, no, you don't.
Quality over quantity all day.
Yeah, no, you don't. Those friends aren't going to help you with your goals and successes.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because a lot of my closest friends now are my clients or my ex-clients where we've done work together. And I'm like, dude, I could tell you work really hard.
Yeah.
And I want that in my life.
Yeah.
And I also tell that like you're a really good influence because you care about my family, you care about my wife, my kiddos. And for me, that's important as well, right? Like I can't just have a friend who's just like, I don't care about your family. So
that's not going to fly.
Not going to work.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a lot to digest. It's a lot to just process. I mean, what are, I would say, some lessons? I know we've kind of talked about some lessons learned along the way, but what are some in particular that you found to be pretty helpful and would be helpful to others to hear?
You're gonna have times in your life where you just feel super down. No matter what you do, no matter what stage you're in your life, and I think one of the best things you can do is kind of view your life from a third-party perspective, and not the whole like, oh, look how fortunate you are compared to others, because that's wrong, right? I look at it more of like, look how far you've come.
Yeah.
And then how far you have yet to go. And we often forget where we were just a few years ago, right? You backtrack my life pre-2019 and I was renting a 1-bedroom apartment in Nashville between my wife and I and our kiddo.
Yeah.
And, then, you have the liberty to be like, yeah, now we're looking to buy our third property and preparing for this, whatever may be happening with this economic situation. No, that's my biggest thing is take a step back and look at, hey, what outlook do I currently have in this life? And that's what I learned.
Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Oh my gosh. All right, bet. So your lessons learned along the way. I think that's great. What would I add to that? I mean, those are all really great points that you've made. And I think one thing that really sticks with me, and this kind of speaks to me as a person as well, like I'm a huge empath, like I'm very much in tune to my surroundings and amongst myself. And I used to see that as a disadvantage, but really I feel like that's pushed me to where I am today. And one of the biggest things is, it's two things. One, expect nothing and appreciate everything has really helped me just change my mindset for everything that I do and everything that I've experienced, in that I'm not expecting to gain something or expect, some desired result out of some, if I'm in interaction with a person, right? And I want them to do something, or I'm like asking for their advice, I'm not truly expecting them to have the answers. And at the same time, expecting them to be, like if it's a family member, expecting to be fully supportive, but I'm still appreciative of the conversation that we could potentially have by me doing that. And I feel like there's always something to walk away with from any encounter, any experience that you have, good or bad. It helps you in some way.
Yeah, that's a really hard mentality though to apply to family though. Family is like your wild card, right? It's
they get under your skin, but
because family, unlike a friend, you can't just like, what I'm saying? Like they raised you in a way, and so they feel sometimes some parents don't, but sometimes they feel entitled to be listened to, and that's when you're like, no.
Absolutely.
Right. So like that's really tough. Like if you can do that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that's really awesome.
So that's actually another episode where we actually dive into that and talk about that, because that is a very heavy, a very deep topic.
Yeah, I want to listen to that one.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right.
And the other piece is just, it's okay not to be okay. Like, it's okay to fumble. It is okay to have those moments of doubt, and for you to just sit in that. Because I think a lot of times we feel like we have to be, like to your quote about, being an imperfect human, that's all part of the process. And a lot of times we think that just because maybe we reached our next goal, that's gonna fix everything. Or we have to have this certain mindset of like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be happy now, why am I not? And a lot of times it's so complex, there's so many other things that could be at play, and it's okay if when you get to something you thought you wanted, it's not exactly what you thought it was, for you to sit in that and rethink like, maybe, well, what do I need from this? Or like, what do I need to do moving forward? And that was my turning point, I guess, kind of thinking about going back to just when I came home with straight A's for the first time ever, came so excited to my mom, and it was just a quick little like, okay, cool, like a little nod, as opposed to this huge celebration I thought it was going to be, because it was a polar opposite when I didn't come home with that. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And that actually catapulted me to want to just...
Yeah, but imagine those straight A's was like a big check, like $1 million.
Yeah.
Right? And your mom was like, okay, right? Mm-hmm. You would still go and cry because you'd be sad.
Yeah.
But you'd rather cry in a Lambo. It's a great quote. You're going to cry, you'd rather cry in something nice. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what your priorities are, right? Of like, what
Don't buy
is important to you.
Lambos. Do not buy Lambos. Buy any other car. So it's too much.
Name dropping all the things, it's fine. But yeah, I think those are two things. And I mean, in general, I always just, anytime I've just found it myself, every time I try to progress, I'm always met with some sort of barrier. And at this point in my life, I'm just like, all right, bet, it's not gonna work out for whatever reason. What can I do to make it work? And it took me a long time to get to that place, because I would get defeated. And everyone has a moment of truly a switch in their brain where they're just like, okay, I'm gonna be okay, let's just move forward. It didn't work out this time, maybe it'll work out next.
Yeah.
So.
I agree.
I agree.
No, thanks for having me, and I appreciate it. And it's funny, like during this conversation, I thought of like something I want to do in life, so I'm excited to implement it.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, to that end, before you just jump and run away, I'm just kidding. Well, yes, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I think this was a really fruitful conversation. I mean, you know, if people find it of interest, maybe we could have part 2 at some point. This is definitely an ongoing conversation, a journey for each and every person. It's very specific to their experiences and needs. And I appreciate you just sharing, you know, what that was for you in this small little snippet. I mean, there's obviously so much there, and we've only scratched the surface.
So much.
But with that, you know, what do you want to leave us with? Like, where can we find you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's my plug. You can find me on Instagram.
This camera, that camera, that camera.
This camera, that camera, hot ones. That's exactly what I thought of. All right, you can find me on Daniel Christopher Photo on Instagram. Reach out, shoot me a message if you have any questions. If you're in the creative space especially and you want to figure out how to maximize your money and your time, that's great. I am hoping to start a podcast all about leverage, and it's all going to be about entrepreneurial spirit and business. And so you can follow that. It's going to be called Making Millions at $4 an hour. So we're just going to talk about leverage with my good old friend, Justin Nelson, who is just a young, budding multimillionaire, 25 years old, and he's got his head on a swivel. So it's awesome. Other than that, you can just take Zaza here, and she'll connect us.
Yes, indeed. Reach out, leave comments, subscribe, all the likes and things. Share with your peers.
Yeah. Share with your peers.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, at the end of the day, I hope, you know, whoever's listening or viewing this, you know, you're able to walk away with some little nugget that feels attainable. Because that's really the goal of these episodes, is just making these topics feel approachable and recognize, even as we were speaking, that it is fluid. It's not just everyone's experience is different, and we all bring something to the table, and it's all valid. So yeah, just thanks for listening, and have a good one.
See ya.